where this one is. But I want to start with some psychology side of this and how quickly people can form groups. So we're talking about things that happen in groups. So we're going to look at minimal group formation, this will work, and how easy it is for us to create groups. So your textbook's going to talk about how we're going to use religion, how we're going to use language, how we're going to use race to form groups. But really, we don't need to even do all of that. Researchers have discovered that we can basically put people into groups and we can make groups very, very simply. The classic study in this regard was done by Sharif. He's going to show back up in a bit. But Sharif, he split, all he did was put boys into different cabins. That was how easy it was that he was to create groups. And what he found is just by putting the boys into different cabins, he could influence which ones would become friends and which ones wouldn't. Other researchers since Sharif have found that you can pretty much pick any trait in the world, any trait, and people will divide themselves into groups on that trait. So you can use eye color, a very classic study using eye color, which we're going to look at later in this course when we talk about prejudice. People have used literally random group 1, group 2, group 1, group 2, and the question though is what happens after you divide people up into groups? They do it very quickly, but what happens after you divide people into groups? That's what's really going to be the focus of this. How do you think the people in this group see the people in this group?
They hate them.
Why would they hate them?
Because they're different. They're in a different group.
But you know it was chosen arbitrarily.
So?
Why are you going to hate them?
Because they're the Bulldogs. I hate them.
Bulldogs. I mean, we kind of already do that in our culture, right, with high school, right? Like, my high school is number 1. Why is it number 1? Because I go there?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, that's the only reason your high school is number 1. Other easy ways to create groups. Russ already mentioned motorcycles. Oh, motorcyclists make them into groups really fast. Like, if you've never ridden a motorcycle, I mean, you just tell you what you got to do when you ride a motorcycle. You have to wave. Not at everyone, but other motorcyclists.
Kind of like how you have to wave at people on the street.
Kind of like you should wave at people on the street, especially if you see your professor walking in.
Totally wave.
Hypotheticals. Right, so like you're on a motorcycle and like, you know, I drive at Tacoma and I don't feel the need to wave at other Tacomas, right? You know, I don't go, hey Tacoma, but if you're on a motorcycle and you don't wave, people talk about you. I mean, did you see they didn't wave? Like, why would they not wave at me? I mean, it's not a wave like this, it's just a...
Yeah. I don't wave on the interstate though, and some of them do, and I'm like, I'm going like 80, I got better things to be doing right now.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on the waving, you know, maybe I'll catch you next time. But it's so easy, you think about, well, okay, and then people form groups of other motorcyclists, right? And you go, what do we have in common other than we ride a motorcycle? Right? I mean, that's really sort of odd how quickly it is to form groups. But once we form these groups, whatever groups we form, we can start making attributions. And attributions are explanations for behavior. And what's going to be intriguing is that we're going to make one set of attributions for our group and another set of attributions for people that are in different groups. So I want to explain some of these particular attributions and show you how this works. In the West, this is not going to be true cross-culturally, but in the West, we tend to make what we can call internal attributions. Now, the way this works is this. Russell does something, right? So here's Russell, he is going to do some action. What are possible explanations for Russell's behavior? Don't tell me cheat. So I see Russell and he is yelling at somebody.
They made him mad.
So one possible explanation is this other person, you know, that they have done something, but that's a situation, right? I could use the situation to explain his behavior, right? I could go, well, Russell is yelling at this person because they just tripped him, broke his helmet, and are walking off like they've done nothing. What's another possible explanation for Russell yelling?
He's having a bad day.
Okay, that's still a situational. Right? He's having a bad day, bad situation.
He's mean.
Yeah. Another explanation could be an internal, right? An internal one, he's mean. Russell's just a mean guy. Right? In the West, we tend to prefer the internal explanations. Usually. There are some exceptions. One exception is going to be if you do something bad. Right? So, you show up late. Right? From the outside, I might make an internal explanation, but what explanation are you likely to give for your behavior?
Situational.
A situational explanation. So we find that when we do stuff that's bad, while we have a tendency to prefer an internal, we're willing to cut ourselves some slack. I'm not late, or I'm not a tardy person. There was traffic. Here's going to be the trick, though, and this is sort of what we're going to have to see. All right, so we're not going to make the person's mean. They're just late. So this person shows up late. This person here gives themselves a situational explanation. What is this person likely to give? So that them themselves give situation. What is this person likely to give to their being? What explanation is this person likely to give?
Internal.
An internal. So we often find that others tend to give an internal explanation. And this is a major Western bias that we tend to give these internal explanations to people's behaviors. It's called the fundamental attribution error. Now, I will go and tell you it's not cross-cultural. Not every culture makes this. Other cultures actually make the reverse error, to be honest. So our culture tends to ascribe to other people's behavior, especially these internal motivations, to whereas the person themselves, especially for bad stuff, gives a situational explanation. To sort of see the shift we're going to make, let's say these two people are friends, and this person shows up late. Or they're part of the same group, and this person shows up late. Well, in that case, they're in the same group. What explanation is this person likely to give for this person being late?
Situational.
Situational one, because they're in my group. Here's someone not in my group. I'm likely to give this internal explanation. So we find that there's some differences in this. And the reason we do this, psychologists argue, is it's where our attention is drawn. People argue that causality is formed where your attention is drawn. Well, if this person is a part of my group, that may be what I focus on. If this person is not part of my group, all I really focus on is I see them showing up late. So it's going to be what takes precedence in my explanation. I cut myself slack. I'm going to cut my group slack. I'm going to cut my culture slack. You see how this is going to work. Because this person and their friends are going to be doing what? The same thing. So we're going to explore this idea. So that's going to be this first one, is that we're going to make these different attributions, and we're going to do it for ourselves and for our group, and other groups are going to do the same thing. There's another assumption people tend to make about groups, and it goes by the fancy name outgroup homogeneity. To appreciate outgroup homogeneity, if you've ever gone up to someone of another ethnicity or from another country and asked them, what do people in your country think of this? Or if I were to go, what do blacks think of Obama? Right? Why should why should you know what all blacks think of Obama? I mean, that's a serious question. Has it ever happened to you? Not necessarily with Obama, but let's see. What would be some other ones that show up? Race down here is a big one. So that's usually people go, what do blacks think of? And I'm like, or do you think of other ones? Gender is a big one. Sometimes people go, what do men think of? I don't know what men think of that, but I know what I think of that. You ever been asked like, what do women think of? Y'all are not participating today. Y'all are like, we're not going to do this one.
I get that. What do biracials think of?
Okay, what do biracials think of?
Whites and blacks.
Like, you know, it's like, I mean, there's a tendency that people have to assume that people in other groups are all very similar. Like, I'm very aware that white males vary widely on a number of dimensions. Why should I assume that black males don't vary along the same dimensions? Or I'm very aware that males vary. Why shouldn't I assume that women vary? But very often people take other groups and go, oh, they're similar, and then they go, that internal trait that they share, that's what's explaining their behavior. If you want to really see this, when people are often angry is where you really see them say this kind of thing too. Like, a friend of mine recently went through a breakup and just like, women just want money. It's like, you know what, I'm not even sure that's true. You know, A. B, I'm sure men would like money too. You know,
people are bad drivers.
Yeah, or some other group. My favorite bad driver, when I was with a friend, we're in Texas, and this is what he said to me. He goes, you know, you can spot the illegal aliens driving, and he goes, they're obeying the laws. And I mean, your objection is that they're actually driving safely. All right, interesting. Yeah, I know, but I thought that was the weirdest objection to make against someone. You know, you can always tell the ethnic food places, they get hundreds on their their ratings. Really? I'm going there. So one net effect of these two tendencies is that we tend to give our own groups and cultures passes. You know, our group has done something, oh, well, you know, that was just some members of the group. We see this now with religion a lot. So very often people will go, you know, Islam or Muslims are all X. But we're aware that Christians or Jews or Buddhists vary widely. Why should we assume that all Muslims have one perspective? Right? And so you see this when people go, oh, wait a second, this person's Muslim, I bet they support terrorism. That doesn't make any sense. Like, do you think it would be like saying that all Christians are like Westboro Baptist. Right? Like you know that's not correct, but that is the akin to saying that all Muslims must support terrorism by picking a extreme bad example and going, oh, they speak for an entire group. We also tend to remember the good of our culture and the not good of other cultures. Let me give some examples here on this one. See if you know your history well enough to know what was happening in America at the same time that Sputnik was launched in Russia. So this initiates the space race. So if you are Russian, you are emphasizing Sputnik. But if you're American, what are you emphasizing in Russia at the same time? So you can think, okay, we have Americans viewing Russians and Russians viewing America. Right? So here's America over here. We're viewing Russia over here. Russia's probably going to emphasize Sputnik, right? They're going to go, oh man, right? And they're going to go, things in Russia were awesome. And they can actually point to something in what's going on in America at this time for evidence that things are not so hot over here. Civil rights. This is the same time that Sputnik is being launched, we're having massive civil rights problems in the United States. We probably don't really tend to think that, oh, wait a second, maybe we don't, what's the old expression, the mote in someone else's eye and the speck in someone else's eye. It's like, oh, Russia had a lot of problems. We were not allowing blacks in schools.